Have you ever stopped to think about the invisible architecture that structures your day? The very language you're hearing, the legal principles that protect you, even the roads you travel on. They are all, in a sense, artifacts. They are echoes from a civilization that crumbled over 1500 years ago, yet whose mindset continues to resonate through the corridors of time. I'm talking about Rome. It's a name that conjures images of gladiators and grand amphitheaters, of legions marching in perfect synchrony. But the true legacy of Rome isn't just in the ruins of its monuments. It's woven into the very fabric of our modern world. The Roman mind was pragmatic, organized, and ambitious. It was a mindset that took the philosophical brilliance of the Greeks and translated it into a practical system for governing a vast multicultural empire. This system, this worldview, proved so robust that its influence has outlasted the empire itself. From the legal bedrock of Western nations to the romantic languages spoken by nearly 1 billion people, the ghost of Rome walks among us. We see it in our capitals, we hear it in our courtrooms, and we feel it in our globalized economy. So how did they do it? How did a small city-state on the Italian peninsula manage to cast such a long shadow over human history? In this journey, we're not just going to look at ancient stones, we're going to dissect an idea, the Roman mindset. We'll travel back in time, not just to see what the Romans built, but to understand how they thought. We'll explore how their approach to law, language, engineering, and power created a blueprint that, for better or worse, the world is still following today. Come with me as we trace the enduring legacy of the Roman Empire and discover how we are all in some way children of Rome. When you hear the phrase innocent until proven guilty, you might think of it as a modern pillar of justice, a hard-won right from recent history. But this concept, this fundamental shield for the individual against the power of the state, has its roots deep in the soil of ancient Rome. The Romans, with their methodical and systematic minds, were obsessed with order. They understood that to manage an empire of millions, you needed more than just swords and shields. You needed a common set of rules. Their creation, the 12 Tables, was one of the first attempts to codify law, to write it down so it was visible to all citizens, not just the whims of a powerful few. This was a cosmic shift in thinking. This legal framework evolved over centuries, becoming a sophisticated system known as Roman law. It introduced concepts that are the bedrock of our own legal systems today. The right to a trial, the use of evidence, the idea that a law should be reasonable and just. Think about the structure of many modern governments. The United States, for example, with its Senate, its concept of a republic, a public affair or res publica, is a direct reflection of the Roman model. They pioneered the separation of powers, understanding that concentrating too much authority in one place was a recipe for tyranny. They weren't perfect, far from it, but they laid the institutional groundwork for a society governed by laws, not by men. So the next time you see a courtroom drama or read about a legal battle, remember its ancient origins. The lawyers in their robes, the judge on the bench, the very notion that both sides have a right to be heard. These are not accidents of history. They are the enduring legacy of the Roman legal mind, a mind that sought to build an empire not just on military might, but on a foundation of law and order so strong that its principles would echo through millennia, shaping the very definition of justice in our world today. What a powerful idea, to build a system that outlives the builders. Language is the vessel of thought. It's how we share ideas, build relationships, and construct our reality. And in the Western world, the language we use is profoundly shaped by a single ancient tongue, Latin. The Romans weren't just conquerors of land, they were conquerors of communication. As their legions marched, they brought with them the language of their administration, their law, and their commerce. For centuries, Latin was the lingua franca, the common language, of a vast and diverse empire. It was the universal operating system for the Western world. This linguistic dominance didn't end with the fall of the empire. It transformed. Like a dying star seeding the cosmos with new elements, Latin gave birth to the Romance languages, Spanish, Portuguese, French, Italian, and Romanian. If you listen closely, you can hear the echoes. The Latin word for water, aqua, flows into the Italian aqua and the Spanish agua. The word for love, amor, beats in the heart of the French amour. Over 900 million people today speak a direct descendant of the language of the Caesars. and even in English, a Germanic language. Over half of our vocabulary comes from Latin, often through French. But the influence goes deeper, into the very specialized languages of power and knowledge. Step into a courtroom, and you'll hear terms like pro bono, habeas corpus, and alibi. These aren't just fancy jargon. They are living fossils of Roman legal thought. Open a science textbook. The systematic classification of life itself, Homo sapiens, is a gift from the Roman love for order, filtered through the Renaissance. The language of the Romans was so precise, so logical, that it became the chosen medium for defining the world, both legally and scientifically. It's the invisible script running beneath our most important conversations. The Romans were, above all, master builders, but their genius wasn't just in the scale of their creations, but in their permanence. They didn't just build for the next emperor or the next generation, they built for eternity. When you look at an aqueduct like the Pont du Gard in France, still standing after 2,000 years, you're looking at a testament to an engineering mindset that fused practicality with immense ambition. They didn't invent the arch, but they perfected it. They didn't invent concrete, but they revolutionized it, creating a version so durable that it could set underwater and has lasted longer than our modern formulas. This practical genius was applied to the very problem of empire. How do you connect and control a vast territory? The answer was roads. All roads lead to Rome wasn't just a saying, it was a strategic reality. They built over 50,000 miles of paved highways, engineered in layers, crowned for drainage, and built in straight lines whenever possible. These weren't just paths, they were arteries, pumping legions, goods and information to every corner of the empire with unprecedented speed and efficiency. Many modern European highways still follow the routes laid down by Roman surveyors 2 millennia ago. This engineering prowess shaped the very idea of a city. The Romans gave us the template for urban planning on a grand scale. They thought in terms of systems, aqueducts for clean water, sewers like the Cloaca Maxima for sanitation, and a grid layout for orderly expansion. They built for the public good, with public baths, libraries, and forums. The Colosseum, a marvel of crowd control and structural engineering, could seat 50,000 spectators and be evacuated in minutes. When we design our modern cities with their water mains, sewage systems, and stadiums, we are, consciously or not, channeling the Roman mindset of building an organized, functional, and enduring home for civilization. The Roman Legion. The name alone, evokes an image of unstoppable force, of disciplined soldiers marching as one. But honestly, the true power of the Roman military wasn't just in the individual soldier's strength, it was in its organization. The legion was a masterpiece of systematic thinking, a modular and adaptable fighting machine unlike anything the world had seen before. It was divided into cohorts, which were divided into centuries. This structure allowed for incredible flexibility on the battlefield, enabling commanders to detach units, respond to threats, and maintain command and control over thousands of men. This wasn't a mob, it was a finely tuned instrument of power. This model of a professional state-funded standing army, with its standardized training, equipment, and hierarchical command structure, became the blueprint for virtually every modern military. The very concepts of divisions, brigades, and companies are direct descendants of the Roman system. The focus on logistics, on ensuring the army was supplied and could build its own fortifications, like the iconic marching camp, was a Roman obsession. They understood that an army marches on its stomach, and they turned supply chain management into a science of conquest. The Eagle Standard, wasn't just a flag. It was a symbol of this collective identity and unwavering loyalty to the state. But the legion's legacy extends beyond the battlefield into the realm of geopolitics. Rome's expansion was a form of imperialism, a relentless drive to secure borders, control resources, and project power. They used the strategy of divide and conquer, turning rival tribes against one another. They established client states and buffer zones. They assimilated conquered peoples, offering a path to citizenship in exchange for loyalty and military service. When we look at the world today, at the complex dance of global superpowers, the strategic importance of trade routes, and the use of economic and cultural influence as tools of statecraft, we are seeing the echoes of Roman imperial strategy playing out on a global scale. The soul of a civilization is found in its culture, what it values, what it fears, and what it gathers to celebrate. Rome's cultural legacy is, well, a complex tapestry of brutal spectacle and profound spiritual transformation. Think of the Colosseum. It was more than just an arena. It was a political tool. The bread and circuses, free grain and spectacular games were a way for emperors to pacify the masses, to distract from political turmoil and project an image of immense power and generosity. This tradition of mass public spectacle, of using entertainment to shape public opinion and provide a social release valve, finds its modern parallel in our obsession with mega sporting events and celebrity culture. Yet from within this empire of spectacle, a radically different idea emerged. A small, persecuted sect from the province of Judea would eventually conquer the empire not with swords, but with an idea: Christianity. Initially, the Roman state viewed Christians with suspicion. Their monotheism was a direct challenge to the emperor's divine status. But the Roman infrastructure, its roads, its common languages like Greek and Latin, became the very pathways along which this new faith spread. In a stunning reversal, Emperor Constantine's conversion made Christianity the favored religion of the state, forever binding the cross to the eagle. This moment created a tension that has defined Western civilization ever since. The relationship between secular and religious power, between Caesar and God. The Roman Catholic Church adopted the administrative structure of the Roman Empire, with its dioceses and its capital in Rome, becoming a spiritual successor to the empire itself. For the next 1500 years, the struggle between popes and kings, between church and state, would shape the course of history, politics, and science. This fundamental conflict, born from the moment a new faith captured the heart of an old empire, continues to resonate in our modern debates about the role of religion in public life. An empire isn't just built on laws and legions, it's built on wealth. The Romans were the architects of a vast, interconnected economic system that was, in many ways, a precursor to modern globalism. They understood the power of a single, stable currency. The denarius and later, the aureus, were accepted from the misty shores of Britain to the deserts of Egypt. This monetary union facilitated trade on an unprecedented scale, allowing merchants to move goods across thousands of miles, with a predictable medium of exchange. Sound familiar? It's the very principle behind modern currency zones like the euro. This economic engine was fueled by a sophisticated network of trade. The Mediterranean Sea, once a barrier, became a Roman lake, the Our Sea. Fleets of cargo ships, protected by the Roman navy from piracy, carried grain from Egypt, wine from Gaul, olive oil from Spain, and luxury silks from the distant east. The Romans built massive harbors, lighthouses, and warehouses to support this flow of goods. They created complex financial instruments, including loans, credit, and joint stock companies, to fund these ventures. They were, in essence, practicing a form of capitalism, using capital to generate profit across a vast, integrated market. But we must also confront the darker side of this economic machine, a parallel that is, honestly, deeply uncomfortable. Much of Rome's prosperity was built on the backs of slaves and the exploitation of its provinces. Massive agricultural estates, were worked by enslaved people, creating immense wealth for a tiny elite while displacing small citizen farmers. The provinces were often taxed heavily to fund the capital's bread and circuses. This stark division of labor and wealth, the tension between a globalized core and an exploited periphery, and the reliance on cheap or forced labor, are issues that have not vanished. They have merely changed their form, echoing in the complex and often troubling supply chains of our own global economy. So we've journeyed through the cosmos of the Roman mind, from the halls of justice to the arenas of spectacle, from the engineer's blueprint to the trader's ledger. What we find is that the true genius of Rome was not necessarily in pure invention. The Greeks were greater philosophers, the Egyptians had older monuments. Rome's genius was in assimilation, organization, and application. They were the master adapters and refiners of the ancient world. They took the arch, the alphabet, legal theories and religious ideas, and they scaled them up, systematized them, and built a durable framework around them that could govern a world. This framework, this blueprint for civilization, is their most enduring monument. It's a legacy of systems of law, language, infrastructure, and military organization. They created a model so powerful and so practical that even after the empire itself dissolved, the people who came after the Goths, the Franks, the scholars of the Renaissance, and the founders of modern nations kept reaching back to the Roman toolkit. They rebuilt their world using the intellectual and structural ruins that Rome had left behind. The empire fell, but the operating system it created continued to run. And so we find ourselves here, 2,000 years later, living in a world indelibly marked by their ambition. The language of science, the foundations of law, the very layout of our cities, and the tensions that define our politics are all echoes of the eagle. Whether we see their legacy as a foundation to be celebrated or a pattern of power and exploitation to be overcome, we cannot escape it. The past is not a distant country, it is the landscape in which we live. And in so many ways, we are all still living in the shadow of Rome.